So after I saw Dungeon People episode 2 do this, around the 8-minute mark, give or take, for pretty much the rest of the episode, I was thinking, because I saw something so creative, so cool, and such a twist on what you normally see in dungeon crawling anime. Because of course we know after the first episode, this is a show about managing a dungeon, hiring monsters, all these things to make a dungeon for people to crawl through. And if you even look at this current anime season with Reincarnated as a Slime, characters being able to go through a dungeon and be revived isn't anything that we haven't seen, and Slime isn't even the first one to do it. But what they ended up doing with the crystals, honestly I think is the first that I've ever seen. And if I've seen it before, or it's been done before and I just haven't seen an anime do it, it definitely isn't a common trend. And what I mean is that once we start realizing, like, okay, I didn't think about last week, but once they bring it up in this episode, oh yeah, you know, Clay kind of casually did kill a bunch of people who were just hired to be a threat. So it's like, okay, are we murderers? Like, should we feel bad? And it turns out, similar to a lot of these shows, when you kill them, they get to be brought back, but it's different. The idea that when they get hired, basically, they get copied. Their soul, their consciousness, their entire being gets copied and made into a copy. That then, that little gem gets thrown into their belly button or wherever it is. So when you drop them and kill them, those drops that you get, you know, it's so interesting. It's such a different take, so that it's like, oh, okay. So, because think about it, right? I mean, up until the end of last week's episode, pretty much, Clay was under the assumption that you kill the monsters inside here and you go through this and that in the third. So the idea that, one, now Clay, if she does fall, she, you know, maybe she's jumping around like she's Sonic the Hedgehog, like she trips and falls and kills herself, she can be brought back because it's not actually her real body at stake. It's a very clever way, and I'm getting the impression that similar to Delicious in Dungeon from the previous anime season, we are going to have another dungeon anime that's going to twist the formula on its head in ways that we actually haven't seen before, and that's really exciting. Now, of course, I have full live reactions to these episodes over on Patreon. If you want to see my full link of thought to any of these episodes of Dungeon People, it's going to be over there exclusively. I'm loving this one. This is such a fun, cute, silly, but also creative show that I really hope doesn't get swept under the radar. I definitely wasn't surprised last week that it wasn't the biggest buzz talked about show of the season. Probably doesn't help that a lot of channels also aren't really promoting this one, but I'm hoping, I'm crossing my fingers that as more episodes get released, similar to Delicious in Dungeon, which honestly had a slow start at the beginning as well, maybe more people will check this out, because yes, is this going to be one that's going to make us sweat bullets, who's going to live, who's going to die? No. But if you're like me, who likes the way anime portrays dungeon crawling, but now getting to see, it's, you know, in a weird way, it's like, what if we had like a roller coaster tycoon but for dungeons, but this time we get to really see it up close and personal. And there's so many little bells and whistles about episode 2 that make me love it at least twice as much as the first episode. Like, the action last week, everything that was really fun, the twists, very fun. But like, whether it's the way about, okay, we're not simply reviving, it's clones, it's copies, it's like, that's just so cool and such a creative way to handle a dungeon. But it's just the dialogue, the interaction. So Clay and Belle are two very cute characters together. We might end up with the softest Yuri show of the season, potentially. Or maybe they'll just be the best of friends. I don't care, either way. They both are just blushing and being adorable around each other. You know, you might want to make the argument or complaint I saw it last week, why doesn't she ask about her dad? True, but in time, I imagine that will pop up. But the idea that, you know, we just go about seeing the dungeon, and it's like, you know, sometimes you have to think about things, right? When you're crawling through these dungeons and all these different anime, you're fighting these monsters. Of course, we're looking at as the author wrote the story as, here's a dangerous location that characters have to go through. But the idea that, what if it was, it's like an amusement park, right? It's constructed to be like, okay, drops go like this goes like this. And the idea that by removing the threat of, okay, yeah, but you're just casually killing the employees that are being hired, that's kind of messed up. You're saying, no, that's not the type of show it is. We could have went dark with it, with that twist of being like, yeah, we just don't care. That would have been quite the edge. But instead, they're like, hey, this is why it's not actually a threat. Here's the hiring process, here's the structuring. Those little rock creatures, I already want to buy merchandise of them. I want a Figma, I want a Nendro, I don't care, just give me those. I'm calling them Roccos. They're all Rocco. And the fact that we might have one of the little Roccos be in love with Clay is fantastic. But the fact that your first day on the job, because you're bouncing off the walls Sonic the Hedgehog style, they're like, hey, can you teach us? And when she's like, nah, I can't, they then still are trying and they're hurting themselves, and they're pretty much saying like, yeah, don't continue to show the impressionable, simple-minded creatures of the cave your techniques. It's not going to be good for them. I think one of my favorite like little moments is just getting to see Belle a bit more. So when she's like giving the exploration through the like, oh, here's the kitchen, here's the bathroom, here's the guest room, you get the impression that she's been a little lonely. But the idea that it's like, okay, she also clearly is a hoarder. At one point in the episode, she tries to go through the junk room and explain why she can't throw things out because like, hey, this is a perfectly good golem arm. Yeah, it has a little too many joints, but it's a perfectly good golem arm. And Clay's like, it's junk, it's garbage. It's funny. It's just there's something about the overall vibe that if you look at the first episode, we can see it can have that action, and it's very fun action. But with this episode, we really get a taste of what managing the dungeon can be like. And I think probably by episode 3, 4, 5 at the latest, we should have some interviewing going on, and that's gonna be fun. You know, like, okay, what do you want to work here? How long was your last employment? Like, there's so many funny ways you can go about that. But yeah, like, I've seen plenty of shows, even in this season, of reviving people in a dungeon so there's no actual threat. But the way they went further, and they went more creative with it, with the whole copy angle, really was something I don't think I've ever seen before in anime, and if I have, it's not common enough for me to remember, and even if it does exist in a few other series out there, it ain't a common thing that you can be like, oh yeah, this is a used trope. No, that's a very fresh direction for sure, and combined with all the dungeon mechanics that's at play, I very much believe, for me anyway, this is a perfect replacement for Delicious in Dungeon, because one of the key things I loved about that show was the twisting of the monsters that you typically associate and the dungeon formula you typically associate in these shows, and how different and unique it was. And for me, I love the simplistic art style, the color palette, everything like that. I know some people last week, I wouldn't say they were hating, but you know, there was some criticisms for sure, but I like the simplistic look of it. It just makes it pop out visually from so many other shows of this season, and I think will help Rain to be a consistent production because of that simplistic charm that they're going for. Let me know what you're thinking down below, and what did you think of how they keep people alive without there being a threat of murder? Let me know. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course, ring that bell, and like I mentioned, we have those full live reactions over on Patreon, and hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. Alright, so today we have Adam Johnson, Gummy, Kyle Tolbert, Sophia Palmieri, Mish, JD, and Ollie Best. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care. And if anyone ever finds merchandise of Little Roccos, I don't want shirts, I want figures. Funko Pops, whatever. If those exist, I want links. That's your homework for this video. Have a good one.